Welcome to the Tarot Tapestry, a weaving of self-discovery, where three tarot mavens put their heads and hearts together to offer their wisdom and insights about the tarot. We hope that you find this helpful in your personal journey to self-discovery and growth.
Join us as we explore ways to use tarot for self-reflection and self-correction.
Together, we'll discover new ways to use tarot to weave threads of understanding into the tapestry of your life.
Hey everybody, welcome to Tarot Tapestry with the Tarot Trio. Today we are discussing the Wheel of Fortune, and we are officially halfway through the major arcana. So round of applause for us. Yay!
Yay!
The Wheel of Fortune this is one of those cards you can pull, and really sometimes it asks more questions than it answers, especially if you're in a situation where you're like, I'm not aware of any big change that's happening right now. And it can be kind of scary. But the thing to remember about the Wheel of Fortune is that it's not just like these big unstoppable events that are coming after you. It's also about things that cycle, seasons, and just really anything you work on. You know, there's always an arc. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and then you have to start a new beginning when it gets all the way around. Some people interpret this card as sort of fated destiny, which I have a little bit of a problem with. I don't really believe in fate, but I do believe there comes a time in every situation where it's too late to make any more decisions about how it's going to go. Like, you've set it in motion and it's going to keep going the way it's going to go. So when you get this card in a reading, you can ask yourself things about, what is this change that's occurring? And you can get curious about what it's going to mean for you and what it's going to require of you to survive it, how it's going to affect your life. And are you being asked to adapt to something, or are you just going to have to accept a new way of being? So it's a really meaningful card. And well, there went my thought. Right off into the ether. And I put together a little spread for us to use later on. And I think that's about all I had to say as an introduction for this card. Whoops. What do you got, Linda?
Well, I was just thinking, and I'm using the Thoth deck because I try to use a different deck every month, and that's what I chose to pull or to use this month. But I was thinking earlier on the numerology of it. Of course, the Wheel of Fortune is 10, and that reduces to 1. And 1 in the major arcana is the Magician. And so it kind of is interesting to me how the Magician can almost influence or use that power almost to maybe to make that wheel turn, to create their own destiny, their own fate. They have all the elements on the table there with them in the image of the Rider-Waite deck. And so I think it's an interesting kind of relationship between the Magician and the Wheel of Fortune when you think about it like that. The other thing I wanted to say was years and years ago when I was working for an HMO in Pueblo, that they decided to close it down, but the parent company that didn't want to keep the headquarters in Pueblo, they took their time to do that. And so they closed it down over a period of about about a year, actually. And I worked in the member services department at the time. And the management staff in the member services department was really trying to keep up morale and keep people working, even though everybody knew that eventually they were going to be without a job, but they were laying off people kind of slowly, and they were giving you notice, and they really did it the right way. So we sort of took on this, the company was called QualMed. And so it was right around the time that movie Titanic came out, was when I was working there. And so we were in the break room one day just throwing out ideas, and somebody called us we were the Qualtanic because we're sinking. And so we took that theme and we ran with it. And we made a big picture of a ship and we put it up on the break room, and we took copies of everybody's ID, and put them in this ship. And then if people got other jobs, we put them in lifeboats, and we did all this stuff. So we sort of organized every month like a cruise ship. And so for Mardi Gras that year, I offered to do just real quick tarot reading in a break room if anybody wanted it. And so as it happened, the day of, I went at noon to get my hair cut, and I got it cut real short. And I asked my lady that was cutting my hair, I said, do you happen to have purple, green, and gold glitter? Which she did. And she did my hair in purple, green, and gold stripes in glitter. So I came back from lunch, and my sign up sheet was full. And I did like 15 minute tarot readings the whole afternoon. And I want to say out of, I probably had a dozen people come and get readings. At least 6 of them in those readings, and I shuffled, and they shuffled, they pulled the Wheel of Fortune. They pulled that card because of all the stuff that was going on. And everybody was like, well, what does that mean? And I was just like, well, things are changing. And it's kind of up to you to figure out what it is you want to do with this change and how you approach it. It doesn't mean that you're going to go off into space and be abandoned, but things are changing. And even if you stayed in this job, that doesn't necessarily mean that things won't change at home or things change with your spouse or your partner or whatever. So I just thought that was really interesting because that was proportionally a lot of Wheel of Fortune to show up in that situation. So
That is
take it
a
away.
lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to say, a lot of times when the Wheel of Fortune comes up, it's not so much about how do you make what's happening change or stop or slow down or anything. It is your choice, though, to decide how you're going to respond to it. Because in any situation, you can make it better or you can make it worse. Think it like if you're having an argument with someone or someone is trying to pick a fight with you, right? It's kind of like arguments are sort of like a merry-go-round. It takes one person to start pushing it. And if the other person hops on and starts pushing along with it, then it's going to keep going faster and faster and faster. But, if you, as the person who's being picked on, or if you can shut it down and just not discuss it or, change the subject or remove yourself or whatever, there's all sorts of things you can do other than, me too, I want to yell too. I want to yell about it too. Okay, Linda, your turn again.
Okay, sorry. Well, the other thing is these days when I do a reading, and if it shows up, or if I'm doing it for myself, I sort of use the same analogy you did with like the merry-go-round, the playground merry-go-round that we all had when we were kids, and I say, like, when you think about being on that merry-go-round, if you're on the edge and you're holding on for dear life and your feet are feeling like you can't do anything but hold on.
Mm-hmm.
And so the trick is not just in the situation, but the trick is even within yourself is to come to the center. Because if you go to the center of that wheel and stand in the middle of it, you can just have your hands on the bars and they can spin it as fast as they want to, and you're not going to go anywhere because you're in the middle of all of that, like the eye of the hurricane. And so if you're going through a lot of stuff, or you have a thing that's going to happen and it's going to be chaotic, or that there's going to be a lot of things that you have to deal with, the more centered that you can come into with yourself, the better you will be able to handle those things without kind of flying off in all directions. So I thought it was interesting that you used the same merry-go-round analogy. I thought that was cool.
I love those things, but they're so dangerous.
Say that one more time, Angie.
The playground merry-go-rounds, I loved them when I was little.
Me too.
They're so much fun, but yeah, they probably broke a lot of arms.
A lot of arms, and then maybe a lot of vomit coming out.
Yes, true.
Yeah, that too.
So I was thinking about what you guys were saying, and I love, Linda, when you were talking about being in the center of the merry-go-round to kind of help you be able to just like recenter yourself, right, in everything that's going on, and
right.
Being able to find ways to help you do that, right? And you know, we live in a world that changes. Like, okay, so I'm just going to stop there. I'm going to read. So I was reading Tarot for Hard Work, and I wanted to read what she had to say
I was
about.
reading the same book.
Yeah, so I copied some of the things that she said that just like resonated with me, and I'm just going to read them and then talk about them. So she says the wheel of fortune boldly oh my God. The wheel of fortune boldly embodies the reality that everything changes. Good situations sour and bad situations improve, and there exists endless possibilities within and beyond that spectrum. And that one part right there where she talks about, and there exists endless possibilities, within this idea of good situations sour, bad situations improve. And it's like every time we make a change, we alter our current reality. And you hear lots of people talk about timelines, and how they talk about you could be living or navigating multiple timelines. And, like I'm always fascinated with looking at change as being I'm in one timeline and I'm moving, and then I make a change and it veers me off that path into another path, and I think the ability to do that, the ability to make change and to be able to deal with the uncertainty of what's going to happen can be such a difficult thing for people to do. And we always say, like, if you don't change, you just remain stagnant, right? I can't see how anybody who doesn't make changes and chooses to stay in whatever little bubble they're in can be living a happy and fulfilling life. And I think fulfillment and happiness and abundance and joy comes from all of the experiences that you have when you make changes. And changes can be like really big and they can be really small. And even those small, tiny changes over time lead to something really big, and I also like this idea of like living in multiple timelines at the same time, because different parts of our lives move at different rates, and I could be in one timeline here, but maybe my career is moving into another timeline, and maybe my, relationship with a good friend of mine is moving into another one, and then navigating all of that can be very complicated, but it can also, in my opinion, be very like stimulating and exciting to know that there are these possibilities out there. And all I have to do is take a few steps to make some changes and experience them. And I think I can say that more now with like confidence and excitement. Um, because of my sobriety. Because prior to that, change and uncertainty, forget about it. That just was not happening, and it's to be able to be in that place of not being able to embrace change and be fearful of it, to now experiencing something different. It's like, wow, like why did I do that? Like, what caused me to do that? But it's sort of like you're slowly awakening and being enlightened as to what is really out there and what you as a person are capable of doing when you can learn to embrace change and not fear it. Go ahead, Linda. You're muted, Linda.
Thank you. Trying to raise all the hands and push all the buttons. I was just going to say, I totally agree with what you're saying. And it doesn't even have to be, because your change was big, pre-sobriety, post-sobriety. That's a big change for anybody. But it can be even just, I'm going to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning an hour earlier than I did before. I'm going to get up an hour earlier and I'm going to enjoy the quiet of the morning, or I'm going to have my coffee, or I'm going to pull a card, or I'm going to do journaling or whatever. And come to find out that that just gives you, you know, a bigger foundation, or a more steady foundation for the day. And it gives you more energy, or whatever the little change is. So change doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm going to move across the country and look for another job, or I'm going to leave everybody behind, or whatever. It could be, but it doesn't have to be. It could be very small incremental changes that make a huge difference when they start to add up. And I think that when people look at the Wheel of Fortune in whatever image that comes at, and it looks like, oh, this is a big thing, and there's somebody on the wheel and somebody's going to be on the bottom, and it seems really intimidating. It can just be something really small that makes a big difference over time.
Yeah, I was going to add on to that. I like that you mentioned making small changes over time, Kate, because if you think about it, if you're on a really long boat trip and you're just 2 degrees off, but you never correct that during the voyage, you're going to end up somewhere other than where you planned on being. But even if you just corrected it by 1 tiny% every day, you would get closer. And maybe by the time you got there, you would be right on target again. So with the Wheel of Fortune, it can make it feel like there are, a lot of choices that you can't make anymore. So as part of your centering, getting calm in your own center, you will discover ways that you can change maybe little things to make this more uh, easy to handle, or easier to integrate or adapt to or accept. And it doesn't always have to be a change in the big thing that's happening. It's just little changes about how you think and what you allow yourself to indulge in when it comes to self-talk or engagement with others in an angry way, or a bossy way, or in a very emotional way. Uh, sometimes all you can do is make choices about how you are going to be in a situation. And that is good enough. It's hard to feel like it's good enough when you're doing it. It can be very difficult. But just remember, if the more to the center of the wheel, to the center of yourself you can get, you have solid ground to stand on right there. And everything is still going to change around you, but you're going to be able to adapt to how it's changing because you are aware and you are paying attention.
Right. And that's we're talking about change, and things always change. Governments change, political things change, the weather changes, everything changes. But really, the only change that we have any control over is us. And we can change how we react to things. We can change whether we pay attention to stuff or whether we pay attention to other things that are more important. We can change it's hard how we feel about things. It's difficult to be around things that are changing, and we know that we don't have any control over stopping it or making it better or whatever. But the only thing we can do is figure out how we individually can react or not react to it, and go from there to give ourselves peace or comfort or whatever it is that helps us get through it.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. And the other thing, well, listening to everything that both of you were saying, was also this idea of expectations, and how change and expectations, I think, go hand in hand. And I think many of us, especially in the country that we live in, and how everything is very goal driven, and everything is go, 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 and you got to get out there and get that goal and achieve that thing that you want. You already set these expectations for yourself. Well, I got to do this, and I got to do this, and I got to do this. And time doesn't work that way. Like, life doesn't work that way. Sometimes we can stay on track and accomplish things. But for the most part, everything that you're expecting to happen in the manner that you're expecting it to happen is not going to happen, and I think that's why people can get very, frustrated and angry and disappointed and internalize that as, oh my God, I did something wrong. Because here you are trying to control the future of things, and you cannot. You can only do so much to get you where you want to go. But there are other things in the world, like just other things that happen that you don't have control over. So I think when you do think about change, and I think change too does require planning. It's not saying that you can't go out and plan the course of action that you want to take, because that's kind of what propels you forward and somewhat prepares you for what comes ahead. But I think mentally and especially emotionally, we need to prepare ourselves for what could possibly happen, or just even coming to terms with, okay, I think challenges are going to come up because they always do, but I can handle those challenges. I have that strength behind me, to help me maneuver through those challenges, and using some of those, perseverance and resilience and building upon those to help us do it and not get so hard on ourselves. A long time ago in my school, we were doing work with a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And Carol Dweck, she's like the person who I think coined the phrase. And it's basically how, you know, y- you can have a very negative fixed mindset. Oh, I can't do that. Right? That's just too hard. I don't have the capability to do that. And then you have a growth mindset that says, well, you know what? I can't do it right this second, but you know what? There are resources and things that I can explore and look at to help me solve this problem, or the fixed part of it is, oh, I'm just so dumb. I don't know anything about math. I can't handle, doing this. And it's like, well, no, I may not understand that yet, but I can explore. I can open up my mind. I can, see other perspectives. I can educate myself. I can learn. I can utilize those resources that are all around me, that are purposefully there to help guide you in, in the changes that you make. Yeah, that's all I got for that.
That's
I
lovely.
I think that's great, and I do think that people get overwhelmed by the totality of things, because they look at everything that has to get done. My last In my last relationship, towards as it was sort of on the downhill slope, my partner asked me, we were driving somewhere, and she asked me, do you ever plan anything? I don't remember what the context was, but she was kind of like, do you ever just, because I kind of am a go with the flow kind of a person. I mean, I have, and I was like, well, most of the things in my life that I have strategically planned or really sat down and thought about that I want and had a timeline or whatever, most of those things literally blew up in my face, and not prettily. So it's like, not really. I'm kind of a big picture person. I might have an end goal. I want to end up there, but I don't do the spreadsheets and the day by day and that just doesn't resonate with me. Um, I sort of look at it when I travel, and it doesn't matter whether I'm traveling out of the country or whether I'm traveling to visit my family in Atlanta or whatever. When I leave the house to go on a trip, I go into what I call the travel bubble. And the travel bubble is that whatever happens in the travel bubble is just something that's meant to happen in the travel bubble. Whether my plane is delayed, I get a flat tire, something happens and I have to deal with it. I take the wrong bus or whatever. that is something that's going on in the travel bubble. And when it happens, if it happens, I'm just going to deal with it. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to plan for it, quote unquote, because we don't know what's going to happen. But if something happens, I'm just going to cope with it somehow. And a lot of people, when I tell them that, they kind of look confused, and I don't know why. But it's just like you were saying, Kate, you can't be afraid of things that might happen. On the other hand, if you don't think about some of those things that might happen, when they happen, you'll be so taken or blindsided by them that you won't be able to function. So it's kind of a fine line. You have to not dwell on it and worry about it, but at the same time, you have to acknowledge that these things could happen. You know, it's like I get in my car and drive to Denver, and most every time I get in my car and drive to Denver, I end up in Denver in 2 hours. But one day I headed to Denver, and all of a sudden my car quit working and my water pump had gone out. Well, I might have freaked out 15 years ago, but as it was, I called my insurance company, that they sent a tow truck, and they towed me back to town, and I got it fixed. You know, simple. But some people would just totally freak out at that. They would just freak out. And so I just feel like the more you think about what could happen without being afraid of it, as you said, Kate, the easier it will be for you to deal with it if something does happen, which it's a trick, but it helps, you know. And I think as you get older and have more life experience, it becomes easier.
And I think that's what it is. It's that life experience, right? Like nobody here is saying that, oh, you just start changing your mindset about it and everything is going to go perfectly. Because no, we know that that's not how it works. But you know, if you are somebody who struggles with change, you have to start somewhere. There has to be a starting point, and like we have said already, that starting point, that first change, that first step that you take can be super tiny. Some people need the tiny change because they need, they need to do it in small increments in order to adjust to it. And some can take a grander leap, and people, can get caught up too in this idea of comparison. Well, why can't I be like Linda? Linda just lets it all go. Why can't I be? I expect when I get in my car, I'm going to be at work in 15 minutes. And if somebody is driving slow in front of me, I may want to curse at them. And I've come a long way with that because I'm a very impatient person. And I've come a very long way. And I have to mentally like talk to myself about it. My first reaction is to say, oh my God, guy, come on. The speed limit is 25 and you're doing 22. At least do the speed limit. And then I have to just sit back and say to myself, Kate, what are you in a rush for? Like, chill out, relax. You have a podcast going on. Just listen to it. It is what it is. And it's not like I'm rushing to the hospital or I'm bleeding out or anything, and it's fine. But I have to make a conscious effort to do that all the time. And I do it often, but I know in the end, there's going to come a point where I won't have to remind myself that it will just become like a reflex to just not say it, as opposed to it being the other way. So different people, will take different amounts of time, but all I can say is just try, give it a try. You can't say something is not going to work unless you give it a good try. And I don't mean a little wimpy try because people will say that, oh, I tried. Well, no, you really didn't try. You know what I mean? You got to give it some really good effort, to make it work.
Sometimes to make a change, you have to do things when you don't feel like doing them. Like when I first started doing
Amen.
yoga, there were days where I would wake up and I would just be like, that's dumb. I don't want to do it. And then I wouldn't do it for a few days and I'd get back on my mat and everything would feel like 1,000 times better at the end. And I can't believe I didn't do this for myself. So, little changes build confidence. Trying to make a
And I
big
think
change all at once is scary. But if you can change a little bit at a time, pretty soon you will be able to start making bigger changes because you'll understand that it's safe for you to make decisions, different decisions, and to be a different way. And not everybody likes it when you first start changing all of the time, even if you're changing for the better. So that's another thing that you should keep in mind is to really stay in your center and don't let other people's opinions or judgments or criticisms pull you away from what you know is right for you.
Yeah.
And the other thing I will say about that is one important thing is that the people who support you as you're trying to do these changes versus the people who have a hard time with it, this is going to tell you a lot about those relationships. Because some people will be 100% behind whatever change you want to do, whether it's doing yoga every day, whether it's getting up an hour earlier, whether it's meditating at lunch or whatever you do, they're going to be 100% behind you. And the people who either are threatened by it or feel like you're doing this because they're not enough or whatever the reason they give you, those are relationships that you really need to look into to see what am I getting out of that and what are those people getting from me being not as good as I could be.
Yeah, I
So
like that. And it's like your plans change can bring upon unexpected change, exactly like what you're talking about, you know. And I think just like one other thing to add to this is I know listening and talking about this, it's a lot of like mental stuff, right? Like what you say to yourself. But, and I just want our listeners to also keep in mind that we make changes because the outcome is not just an action or a thing, but it's also how we want to feel, right? What kind of state of emotions do I want to experience, you know, at the end of all of this? You know, and I can say that, you know, sometimes I will see or you'll hear about like college students, right? They're in high school, they're applying for colleges, and this one is like, I know it, I want to be a doctor, I want to study medicine, I want to do this. It's going to make me happy. It's something I've looked forward to my whole entire life. And then you go to college and you start taking the courses and you're like, oh, yeah, I'm not digging this. This is not, you know, something that I want, you know, and then at that point, you have like a choice. You can push yourself to continue because it's an expectation that maybe you set for yourself. Maybe it's an expectation that your family has set for yourself. But to stop in a moment such as that, where you're now starting to question the direction you're going in and say, am I happy doing this? Like, is this making me happy? Am I feeling good right now about it? And I mean, take aside the massive amount of working and studying and stuff, that's kind of different. But I'm doing this, I'm seeing it, I'm experiencing some of these things. Am I really happy? Can I see myself doing this for the rest of my life? In the course of my education, am I going to be happy? Am I going to continue being inspired to do this? You know, and if your answers to a lot of those are no, you know, then maybe just taking some time to think more about it, you know, would be very good because we want to feel fulfilled and happy and joyful at the end of whatever we're pursuing. Now, you know, we know also with the Wheel of Fortune, your emotions don't always stay the same. So you'll never be in like that 10 of cups, right? You'll never be in that happy land. Everything is great. I'm loving this. Nothing can go wrong, because that's not how life works, right? But the wheel comes in and says, oh, well, things are really good right now, but just beware, you know, things are coming, you know, and we need to start preparing yourself for possible little disruptions here and there that might occur. Nothing big, nothing, you know, major. Maybe they are. But, you know, these are things that you can handle, you know, and I really do believe like when you hear people talk about like the universe gives you what they know you can handle. You know, and I know that people who are religious think the same way. God only gives you, what he knows you can handle. And I feel like the universe or spirit, like you're given what you can handle, and we underestimate our abilities, and we underestimate how resilient we really are. We're in a society where judgment is, people judge you all the time from all directions, and it lowers our sense of, I can do this, I got this, this is good, and mistakes are good, right? They're lessons learned. Yeah, I feel like I'm giving a sermon now. I'm sorry.
Well,
You're doing great.
we say in quilting there are no mistakes, just happy accidents.
Just
Yes.
like Bob Ross, his happy little tree.
Yes.
Happy little trees. Yeah, happy little trees. Happy
When
little
I
scene
tell
over
people,
here. Yeah,
I tell people when I give them a knitted gift, if they find any mistakes, it just adds to the handmade charm.
that's right.
That's how you know a machine didn't do it.
That's right. That's exactly right.
I used to
So do
love
we want
listening to Bob Ross. He just had this just this soft voice, and everything was just free flowing. And he literally, went with the flow. Little mistake here. Oh, we'll just add a little bird. Or, we'll just add a little cloud here. And it's just like the way he said it, it was like so effortless. And the slapping of his
brush?
paintbrush when he put it in like the turpentine, I guess it was, because he was using oil and I used to love that guy. I'm sorry, Linda, you were going to say something about a spread.
No, I was going to say, do we want to do Angie's spread?
Yeah, okay. So I made a little Wheel of Fortune spread, and you should probably take your wheel out of your deck, because if you pull it in this, you're doing a Wheel of Fortune spread. You pull a Wheel of Fortune as the answer, everybody's going to get mad at me. So,
I just put it back in. Darn it! I pulled it out and just
oh
put it back
no.
in. Ah,
So I'll read the questions that I wrote real quick, and I'll reread them as we pull if we need to. The first one is, what change is occurring? And if you already know something is going on and that's the change that you're concerned with, you can find a card that represents that for yourself. Or you can just, shuffle and pull and consider what that card has to say for you. And the second card is about what the change is going to mean to you, how it's going to affect your day-to-day life. Um, and the third one is, what is this change going to require of you? What are you being asked to accept or adapt to? And then you can draw another card or a few cards to kind of lay out your next steps of what you want to do. So I haven't pulled my cards yet, but I do have my wheel out already. So I'm just going to slap down a few cards here.
I went ahead and found my wheel, and I do know what change. Well, I know what change I'm drawing cards for. Okay, but I'm not gonna pull out a card to represent it, because I just kind of like to see what the cards show.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens.
Okay, Kate. All right. So here's my reading. For the change, I pulled the Two of Pentacles. And that shows the juggler standing, balancing these two pentacles in the lemniscate, and they're sort of dancing. And it's about, to me, this is about balancing resources. Like, how much am I going to do over here? How much am I going to do over there? And I got to keep all of these things rolling back and forth in the air. So that can be quite chaotic. What the change will mean to me if I can master this process, I pulled the World. So that is a pretty good, I think that represents feeling individuated and sovereign and, free and like sort of masterful at what I'm doing. For what's it gonna require of me? I got the Eight of Cups. So to me, that says that there might be a few things that I think are very important to me right now that I might have to like leave behind for a little while. And the card I pulled to inspire my next actions, was the Strength card.
Oh, wow.
And that to me is about balancing, like we were saying, sometimes you got to do things you don't like to do when you're trying to change something. So you have to make sure that that lion in the strength card, you don't let him go wild and just, either try to do too much and burn
You have to
out.
tame that lion.
Yeah,
You
try to
eat
do
that
too much.
frog.
Yeah, eat the frog. Exactly. Eat the frog. Every morning, that's one of the things I try to do when I'm making my to-do list. I kind of wake up and I go, what do I want to do least today that has to get done? And I try to do that first.
That's really
All that
weird because
frog.
when I was working, and that's what I would do. It was like, what is the task or the project that I have to do that I really would procrastinate on if I could, and that's the one that I tried to do first, just to get it out of the way. Because usually the procrastinating and the worrying about it and the yeah about it took more time than actually doing the damn thing. So I would do the damn thing and be done with it.
Excellent. I think getting, like when I was a little kid, I hated peas. So my granny used to tell me, eat those first. Eat it first and then you're all done. And so that's kind of how I have approached a lot of,
Yeah,
the work I've had to do in my life. Just do the thing you're looking forward to the least, get that done first and out of the
yeah.
way. And the rest can be.
I think that's a smart thing. It's very
Mhm.
helpful.
Also
I
in my
think
reading, I really love that the Two of Pentacles and the Strength card each have a lemniscate in them. The Two of
Yes.
Pentacles, he's got it, around the things in his hands. And in the Strength card, it's swirling above her head. So I think, when I'm starting to feel a little topsy-turvy, that maybe one of the things to do is to um, take a minute and figure out where it is that I feel like things are getting out of control and deal with that thing, that part of the thing, and get it
Yeah.
settled down. And I can go back to happily, impressively
And the other thing is,
juggling.
even though it's a different shape, it's the figure eight kind of shape that you can kind of flow in that way, but it's still a constant flow, just like the wheel is a constant turning of cycle. So it's very closely related as far as it feels closely related to me.
Hmm.
Do you want to
I
go
was
next, Jake?
thinking, I just wanted to comment on Angie's thing. So when you were talking about the Two of Pentacles and the Strength card, it kind of reminded me of how the Two of Pentacles, you can get really dizzy, right? When you're juggling lots of things, right? You can just be like, oh my God. And that Strength card is the card where, where you talked about that ride, what is it
The
called?
merry-go-round.
Merry-go-round. Yeah.
The merry-go-round, yeah, and how when you go into the center, you're not going to be as affected by it. And that strength card is what helps to keep you or to bring you or guide you to that center so that, you can just like not be so dizzy and then maybe be able to think about, well, what are some of the changes that I need to make so I don't keep getting dizzy? I really like that.
I love that.
Um, okay, for what changes occurring, I had so many things going on and I figured out, let me just see what the cards have to say. This is why I love tarot, Three of Swords. And so I take that more as a journey that I have been on in healing, right? And not just healing in little things, but some major, maybe triggers or really dealing with some hurt and pain from my past that is affecting me now, as we know that always happens. Um, but what I love about this card, so this is from the Good Fortune Tarot, is you have the heart and you have the two swords in the heart that are crossed, and then the owl has plucked one sword out.
Hmm.
And I love that idea because it's like, okay, I parts of me have been healing, the sword coming out, and then there's still other parts that need that healing, and in certain specific areas of my life that I will not mention here, but that kind of still need that healing. So that is change, right? Healing is change, and you have to make changes in order to heal, both emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, in order for you to heal. And the second one is, what will this change mean to you? How will it affect your day-to-day life? And I got the Seven of Pentacles. And I really love the Seven of Pentacles because in this particular deck, I see the back of the lady, and she's touching a bush that has all the pentacles. And in front of her is a ladder that is leading up to the sky with the phases of the moon, which again is, like cycles. But I always see the Seven of Pentacles as a time for assessing, right? Assessing where you are at this point in time in whatever it is that you're trying to grow. And here it just happens to be healing and change. Where am I right now? And what adjustments might I need to make, because that's also part of a healing process. Then what will this change require of you? What are you being asked to accept? And I got the Seven of Wands. And it took me a minute to kind of think about that. Um, but I think it's to accept, like, don't resist it. Don't fight it. Don't, there will be challenges like we talked about that will be hard, but do your best to try to not resist it, to just let it happen, and work on not being fearful of what the outcome might be, because that's why we resist things, right? We resist it because we're not sure that we can handle it, but we can handle most things. So I think that's what that card says. If you feel you're being resistant, to kind of just let go. And then the fourth one is draw one or more cards to inspire your next step. And it was the High Priestess. And I love that, because I think listening to your intuition helps you make better decisions, better choices, and it really helps to align your path forward with, reaching your authentic self, really taking what's happening in that first card, in the healing process and the grief and the pain and stuff that has happened before, and now becoming more in tune and more accepting and more understanding of how my intuition plays in all of that healing, and to not let go of that insight, not to stray too far away from it, but to keep myself um, you know really focusing and believing in what my intuition and inner knowing knows. That's it.
That's awesome. Okay. Well, I haven't turned anything. I've laid them out, but I haven't turned them over. So this is interesting. All right. What is the change? Oh, glasses.
I love when you do that, Linda. I just have to say that. I love when you will not turn over your cards until we start. I find that I admire that about you.
I don't know. Well, the first one I got, what is the change that's occurring? Oh my gosh. And I got my favorite card in the whole deck, not the Lovers. Which the change that I'm thinking of really, it has nothing to do with a relationship. It has nothing to do, and the Lovers card really isn't about that. This is about me making choices and how I'm going to show up for this. How am I going to show up for this? Am I going to sort of take hold of it? Am I going to be tentative about it or fearful? Am I going to kind of embrace it? Am I going to be really present and go through it very consciously versus just letting it happen, or not willing to look at all the parts and how all parts of this can affect things. So I just think this is a reminder that I need to be very, very conscious and very present with this change so that I can make the choices that will allow it to happen in the best way possible. So that's actually not probably one of the better cards for this than that I hadn't thought about. So that's really cool. Okay, second one. What will it mean to me? All right, Princess of Wands. The top deck has what is it? Knight,
Princess, and a
princess and queen, no king. Yeah. Okay. So this is Princess of Wands. A very active card. She's got it's just fiery. It's just fiery. She's in a flame. She's going up. She has a tiger by the tail. And so it's going to affect my day-to-day life for sure. There's going to be a lot of energy. There's going to be a lot of things that I have to think about. There's going to be, I can't talk about it too much, but it could involve a move. It could involve a potential thing, but I'm going to have to deal with a lot of my possessions. So I'm going to have to figure out what to do. I've been on this journey of sort of minimalizing and downsizing since 2018 when I moved to Denver. So it's just, but now I kind of plopped down and stopped doing it. Now I'm going to have to ramp it up again. So the Princess of Wands is going to put a little fire under my butt and help me to do this. All right, so the third one, I drew 2 cards because it's kind of 2 different questions. What will this change require of me? And got the Empress. Interesting. This one is going to require me to think about abundance in a different way. Once again, and I think it's gonna require me to focus on abundance as something that has really nothing to do with countable things like books or tarot decks or jars of food or whatever it is, pairs of shoes. It's going to require me to think of abundance in a different way and sort of put that into practice in my life. And how will it affect my day-to-day life? And I got the Prince of Cups, which is really interesting. Because I think that, and they kind of go together, I think, because when you think about abundance as something that has less to do with possessions than a feeling, and the cups are all about a feeling that your cups can be really full, and yet you don't have a lot. And I think that's been a goal of mine for a long time, is to be very abundant feeling without having a lot of things, which some people have a hard time with that. But I find that the more stuff that I have around me, and I'm a kind of a clutter person. I like to say someone could lock me in a hermetically sealed room, start naked, and in 20 minutes I'd have a pile of mail and Kleenex at my feet. I just seem to make clutter no matter where I am. It just happens. But I feel like abundance, that feeling of abundance and a life of full cups, doesn't have as much to do with actual things as most people think it does. And so the final one, the card to inspire me. Wow, Princess of Cups. Okay.
You're getting a lot of court cards.
I am. I've got a lot of court cards. And I'm going to pull Princess of Cups here. Is just, she looks almost like a butterfly. There's a fish and a swan, and she's got this big cape, and she's just kind of floating in the water. There's a water lily, and she's holding a big shell with a turtle. And so lots of water imagery and lots of just, I feel like this is almost like a real go with the flow kind of card that you just have to, when you get to this point, it's sort of like you don't have to worry. When you get to that point of feeling abundant, you don't have to worry about every little thing, I've lost that thing, or this, I have to take care of this, or I'm sorry about the dog. If you hear it in the background, he's barking downstairs.
That's our producer, Zeus.
Yes, our producer. So I feel like this Princess of Cups is just sort of telling me to go with the flow once I get these other things situated. And I'm going to pull one more just for fun. Oh, the Emperor. Okay. Be in my power.
Yeah.
Power. So there we go.
That's really cool, bringing water and fire together, right? Because the Emperor is a fire card.
Steam. It makes steam, and steam powers things without pollution.
That's right.
So
yeah. Well, that was a fun reading.
That was great. I have to say, that was like, I loved just everything you said about all of those cards. And the last one, when you pulled it, not the Emperor, the was it the Princess
Princess
of
of
Cups?
Cups. Uh-huh.
And that is that is similar to what the king would be in the tarot deck, or is it the queen?
Um, Maybe the queen. Well, they have queens. It's the prince and princess, and the knight and the queen. So
Okay,
maybe.
so it just reminded me of like one or more cards to inspire your next steps. It kind of just also reminded me of like being compassionate with yourself, when you are moving from this, like, going from this like actually you're going into a minimalist lifestyle, basically, is
Mhm.
what you're doing, saying that you don't need all of these physical items, but having that compassion for yourself, because as you move on those journeys, we all self-judge ourselves, about, kind of what we're doing, why we're doing it, and then we start to even question too, like our emotions about it, and it's just having that self-compassion, you know,
Yeah.
being compassionate to ourselves about all of those challenges that will come up as we make the
And I
changes.
sit here with decks to the left of me, decks to the right of me, and
Mm.
I'm looking at all these decks that I have, and I'm laughing. But at the same time, I have to think, it's okay. It's okay. I have them. I'll deal with them however I need to deal with them, and they all mean a lot to me. So I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just
Well,
going to be
that's the
gentle.
important thing.
Yeah,
Also,
I'm
I
just gonna.
noticed in my reading, I got two major arcana cards and two eight cards, like the Eight of Cups, and then Strength is an eight too. So I'm gonna have some more stuff to think about. I wasn't really uh I just pulled a card for what change is happening. And it's like you're balancing things, which is, who's not. But oh
I
gosh,
just
sorry.
realized that I got the Emperor and the Empress.
Oh yeah.
That doesn't happen. I had a reading. I had a person come in, oh gosh, a few weeks ago, and she had a couple questions about a certain thing, and she actually got the Emperor and the Empress too. And I had never pulled those two cards together in a reading, either for myself or for somebody else, and I thought it was really interesting. And here
Yeah,
they
they're
are.
showing up together all the time for you.
Probably.
Well, this was fantastic. And Angie, thank you so much for these questions. It's, when I first read them, I was like, oh, I think I might struggle with these. But, honestly, it just kind of flowed. And they
Burned
were
like the
very,
wheel.
Yep.
and they were very inspiring, very thought-provoking, and I think that you can go really deep with these cards. And I like what you did, Linda, where you kind of pulled multiple cards, for certain questions. And I think that you can get a lot from this. And it's like one of those spreads too that you can go back to every so
Oh
often,
yeah.
because like we said, everything, things change all the time,
Yeah.
The only constant is change.
See,
Exactly.
the fun thing to do with something like this is like if you if you want to do the reading and write it down, make notes, and then put it in a drawer and go back in 6 months and pull it out and see if you've made progress, if any of this was out, if the thing that you thought was going to be the change was actually the change, or if it turned out to be something else, and then reassess. I like to do that kind of thing for something like this.
Oh, I have a tangent. I have, since the beginning of this year in January, I've pulled a card just about every single day because I'm trying to really get familiar with my Spirit Keepers tarot. So I've pulled a card from that every day, and I've kept track of which cards I pulled in my journal. So when I would pull a card, and if I saw a tick mark under it, I would find out which date I pulled it on and go back to that date and read what was going on that day. And it has really shown me a lot of connections. And
Oh
so,
wow.
it sounds very tedious, but it doesn't have to take a lot of time. And,
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of tarot teachers when I was, taking courses. I had a year where I was just like, I'm going to take every single tarot course in the world. And a lot of them say to do this. And I think that most people are like, yeah, right. I'm going to do that. But it really is. It like even if you just do it for a couple of months or a week, especially if you are seeming to be, you know how some cards feel like they're following you. Like for a while, I
Hmm.
could not get away from the Hanged Man. It didn't matter. The deck didn't matter, and I wish I had been more diligent about keeping track of what I was pulling. But I was kind of a, kind of a chaotic mess. Then I'm still a bit of a mess, but I'm less chaotic now. I'm more of a
I've
control.
been having an experience like that with the Nine of Cups recently. The Nine of
Mm,
Cups has been showing up a lot, and I think the Nine of Cups is telling me. Sometimes I think when they show up for you a lot, they're trying to say that it's okay to embrace whatever the thing about the card is, and I think this Nine of Cups is trying to tell me that it's okay for me to be proud of myself and what I've done.
mhm.
That I don't have to have won the Nobel Prize to be proud of things that I've done. Nobody has to really know about it. It doesn't have to mean anything to anybody else. It's okay for me to be proud of myself for what I've done in my life. Even other people might think it's small or whatever, but the things that I've done have been a lot to me, and that's okay. I can appreciate that.
I
What
love
only
that.
matters is that you're proud of yourself. It doesn't really
Right.
matter if other people are proud of you or
Right.
not, but the fact that you can say I am proud of myself for doing this, that's amazing because
And it's
that in
okay to be
itself is
proud of it
very hard.
because we have this thing in, whether it's religious based, which some of it is, or whether it's just, you can't toot your own horn, blow your own horn, unless you're an idiot like Donald Trump or somebody that's got endless money, Jeff Bezos or Zuckerberg or whoever. Then they can be proud of themselves because they have all this. And I think that's ridiculous. I think if you've done something and you've stood up for yourself and you've followed a plan that you made, or you've lived in alignment with your values, whatever that is, I think that's something to be proud of. And there's nothing wrong with saying, I'm proud of myself for doing that. You're not too big for your britches. You're not blowing your own horn. You're not um, denigrating anybody else by doing that. You're just proud of who you are and what you've done in your life. And that's absolutely fine.
It is good
And
to
that
be proud of what you do,
Yeah.
what you achieve. Speaking of cards that you pull repeatedly, I can't believe I didn't say this first. Was it last week or the week before? I pulled the Four of Swords 4 days in a row.
Oh my gosh.
The Four of
wow.
Swords in the Spirit Keeper's Tarot is called the Convalescent, and it's sort of reminiscent of the traditional imagery in that there's a knight laying on a slab. But in this one, it's more about healing and resting, and the swords are there for when you're ready to get up and take up the fight again. But right now, you just need to rest. And I was having a lot of emotional uh, upheaval, and lots of things kind of felt up in the air and very tense and exhausting. And I really did need those 4 days to just sort of chill. And that is
And to prepare for what came over the weekend.
that's right. And uh sometimes tarot can really be it. I try to tell people when they, kind of look a little bit afraid when I say I'm a tarot reader. I say, I'm not personally a fortune teller. It's never really worked that way for me. I know it does for some people. Um, but I use it more as a tool for self-reflection and for guiding my own life. And then this happens and it's like, oh, wow, wow. This is something that just really lights my brain up. That's one of the reasons I love this practice so much, this technique for engaging, examining, and creating the life that you want.
And that's how I felt when I pulled the first card, the Three of Swords. I just had um I also see the Three of Swords as, like a healing process and maybe healing from triggers and traumas that have occurred, in your life. And just yesterday, I was having a conversation with somebody else, and we were talking about our triggers and how our triggers affect your communication, they affect your relationships. And we had like a really long, and it was a really great conversation. And then to pull that card as the change that's occurring and that sword coming out, it was kind of like, okay, like the healing process for this particular thing is starting. And it was almost as if yesterday was like that starting point that I talked about, like that first step towards something. But like you said, like I just, and that's why I love tarot, because it tells you like it is. And that to me is like a card too of like you're on the right path. Like
Mhm.
you're doing
Yeah.
what's right for you. And I think that's important too, to have that faith and that confidence that the changes that you are making are good for you,
Mhm.
and you have that
Yeah.
faith that it's going to work out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Another thing with the Four of Swords too is it's kind of like a surrender, right?
Hmm.
You're just like, I just gotta rest. I just gotta
Yeah.
rest and not have my hands in this
I
crap.
can't I
Or
can't fight right now. I can't
right.
fight right now. I'm gonna put my sword down and just
Mhm. And
rest.
just let things be. And Linda's known me for a long time. Kate has known me for going on a long time, I guess. Um, that's hard for me to do. It's hard for me to just not do anything about something.
Hmm.
So, but I did take advice and it worked out really well. I felt rested and, you know,
That's wonderful.
And
yeah,
are you proud of yourself, Angie,
I
for
am
doing what
proud
you
of
did?
myself. I am proud of
Awesome.
myself for taking a break when I needed it.
That's
So,
absolutely
I
right.
want every listener right now to stop what you're doing and just say, I am proud of myself.
yes,
Absolutely.
yes, definitely.
If you're upright and vertical in this day and age and going through life and getting things done, you should be damn proud of yourself.
What's the saying?
Absolutely.
Upright and not crying. That's pretty
Upright,
good.
and up and not
Some
crying.
days
That's
that's
right.
good
What is that?
enough.
Finish the
I
how
think
are
it's
you? Up
finished.
and not
I
crying.
think, yeah.
That is awesome. Well, this was
Finish me.
another fabulous episode.
Yes, ma'am.
And so what we have decided was that this is going to be our last episode for our season one. We're going to take some time off to, get some things done that need to get done. And we will be coming back in just several weeks with our brand new season two, where we will continue with the second half of the major arcana, and sprinkled in there will be some other topics that
New moon.
we will be talking about. What did you say, Angie?
I said new moons and all kinds of things. We've got all kinds of ideas and it's going to be a lot of fun. So this is a
Yeah.
good time to take a break for, a seasonal break. Yep, that's what it's called.
Let's
Spring.
call it
It's
our
spring break.
spring
There's a
hiatus.
whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to thank our listeners for, starting this new podcast journey with us. And for all of our followers, we truly appreciate you doing so. And, we'll see you in a few weeks.
Bye, everybody.
Y'all have fun.
Bye.